6 years after baying crowds ousted him at the peak of the Arab Spring, former President Hosni Mubarak of Egypt was freed on Friday from the Cairo hospital where he had been detained, capping a long and largely fruitless effort to hold him accountable for human rights abuses and endemic corruption during his 3 decades of rule. Mr. Mubarak, 88, was taken from the Mahdi military hospital in southern Cairo, where he had been living under guard in a room with a view of the Nile, to his mansion in the upmarket Cairo suburb of Heliopolis. He went home at 8:30 this morning, said his longtime lawyer, Farid El-Deep, who stewarded Mr. Mubarak through a tangled cluster of prosecutions since 2011, speaking by telephone. "I don't have further details, but he is home and all is well now." His release begins a third act for a once unassailable Arab ruler and American ally who came to power in 1981 after the assassination of President Anwar Sadat during a military parade. 30 years later, Mr. Mubarak was ousted by the multitudes that thronged Tahrir Square for 18 days in the heady, hopeful early months of the Arab Spring. Continue reading the main story. Related coverage. Egyptian prosecutor orders release of Hosni Mubarak, president toppled in 2011 March 13, 2017. Court in Egypt overturns Mohamed Morsi's death sentence November 15, 2016. Egyptian court clears way for Hosni Mubarak's release March 2, 2017. The strange, unending limbo of Egypt's Hosni Mubarak May 16, 2016. At the time, Mr. Mubarak's fall seemed to signal an earthquake of change across the Arab world, shattering the established political order, suggesting that its most powerful leaders were no longer immune from prosecution. His release capped the crushing of those hopes, and the enduring disappointment of the Egyptians who risked their lives to topple him, even if many now say the challenge is far bigger than a single man. "At this point, I really don't care," said Ahmed Hararo, an activist who lost his sight after he was shot by police, first in the right eye and then in the left eye, during the demonstrations that shook Cairo in 2011. "I realized years ago that this is not just about Mubarak and his regime, it's an entire system that has now resurrected itself." Weary, apathetic or fearful of openly speaking their mind, Egyptians have grown shy of confronting power. The years of trials of Mr. Mubarak, on a wide range of charges, ultimately yielded a single conviction on a minor corruption charge. Few expect that his release from detention, an unthinkable prospect just a few years ago, will result in any significant protests. After becoming the first Arab leader to face trial in his own country, Mr. Mubarak was initially imprisoned at the notorious Stora prison complex, and was then held at the Mahdi military hospital. He faced numerous charges, some of which carried the death penalty as a potential sentence. Mr. Mubarak faced accusations of conspiring with the police to kill 239 protesters in Tahrir Square, of siphoning tens of millions of dollars from the state coffers, and of cutting off the country's internet during the 2011 uprising, among other crimes. But what astonished Egyptians most was the sight of a man many had long feared, scowling in a courtroom cage. Despite the severity of the charges, Mr. Mubarak remained defiant, insisting that it was he, not the Egyptian people, who had been wronged. His sons, Alaa and Gamal, joined him in the dock, accused of embezzling millions of dollars and overseeing a vast system of cronyism and corruption. But by then, it was becoming clear to many Egyptians that while Mr. Mubarak had gone, the system he controlled, with the military, security agencies and courts in the background, remained firmly in place, and was not inclined to cede power easily to the restless young protesters. The first democratic election, in 2012, elected as president a leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, Mohamed Morsi. But he lasted only a year, making a series of political blunders that cost him the support of the military, crucial parts of the security apparatus, and millions of Egyptians, who gathered in the streets for a second time in June 2013 to call for his removal. The military obliged on July 3 and installed General Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who cleared Brotherhood protesters from central Cairo with a massacre of at least 800 people by the security forces in August 2013. It sent a signal that no further uprisings would be tolerated, and Mr. Mubarak's trial seemed to reflect the political riptide. For his court appearances, Mr. Mubarak was flown by helicopter from the Mahdi hospital, often wearing sunglasses as he was carried off the aircraft on a stretcher. Public anger toward his misdeeds faded to wariness as Egyptians turned to more pressing matters: Mr. Sisi's harsh crackdown on his opponents, the emerging war against the Islamic State in Sinai, and a growing economic crisis.